we'll go to Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for appearing again today. I've handed some documents for circulation. They're copies of BOM forecast versus actual. I think you'll be familiar with it for sure. That's a contradiction of terms, think for sure. Anyway, I'm sure you'll be familiar with it. On the 19th of September 2023, the Bureau of Meteorology weather forecast read, quote, warmer and drier conditions would be more likely over spring and summer, end of quote. Linking the Indian Ocean dipole with El Niño using the words, quote, the last time this occurred was 2015, end of quote, which was a very dry year, especially in Queensland. The bush listened to that, and a lot of other people did too, investors as well. On 30th of November, Bureau of Meteorology predicted, quote, a high chance of warmer than usual days and nights across Australia, below average rainfall likely for much of the tropics. The actual weather, northern Queensland was flooded in December by tropical cyclone Jasper. Big floods. Inland Queensland was flooded in January by tropical cyclone Kirrily. Southeast Queensland was flooded in December and January. I've circulated your entire forecast for 2023, split into 5 periods. Each period forecast except one was for drier weather than occurred, and one was about right. None predicted more rain than occurred, much less than I would have hoped. My question is simple. Is your weather model fundamentally flawed?
No, no, Senator, is not.
Okay. Conditional. It's costing nearly $1 billion to upgrade your computer system, the robust program as it's called. Is that still the cost, and can you provide an itemisation, because it appears a ridiculous amount of money?
So, firstly, as I've answered to many senators in this chamber over many years, the costs associated with the robust program are cabinet in confidence. They're not for publication. As I also answered, I think, the previous hearing, perhaps the one before, in response to a question from Senator Pocock, the upgrade of the Australis computer system is not part of the robust program. It is a separate program of work.
Could you explain the Australis versus the robust?
Robust
Robust
is a complex program to upgrade the Bureau's ICT and observing systems. Fundamental ICT.
What's ICT?
Information and communication technology.
Thank you.
Our underlying information and communication technology infrastructure, our observing networks, all sorts of things.
Recording devices?
So I'll get to that in a sec.
I just want to explain what ICT is.
Yeah, so that includes radars and automatic weather stations and automatic balloon launches, all sorts of things that observe the environment as well as our underpinning technology infrastructure. And the robust program, again, has 3 dimensions. It has a security dimension, so in other words, investment to improve the security of the Bureau's systems from threats from our country's adversaries. Stability, in other words, prior to the investment in robust, many of the Bureau systems were very old, many decades old, and we're experiencing challenges in keeping them stable and operational. And then resilient, so that in the event of an outage, the capacity of the Bureau to respond and have our systems back online is improved. So there are 3 dimensions to robust: security, stability and resilience. There is a supercomputer dimension to robust, which is a second supercomputer, a disaster recovery machine. So prior to robust, our disaster recovery functions were executed within a single machine in a single place. The arrangements going forward will be different. I'd rather not disclose those in detail for security reasons, but the robust program funded a second supercomputer for disaster recovery purposes. That is a different machine to the Australis machine that's often been asked in Senator Pocock's questions. That was a separate program to robust, Senator.
Okay,
so you're conflating two bits of technology uplift, but 2 separate programs.
And the total cost is $1 billion for both.
No, I said I'm not going to speak about the cost of Robust. The cost of the Australis computer upgrade, I think, is roughly about $44 million of that order, something like that.
Well, Dr. Johnson, you're required to produce to this committee any information or documents that are requested. There's no privacy, security, freedom of information or other legislation that overrides this Senate committee's constitutional powers to gather evidence, and you're protected from any potential prosecution as a result of your evidence or producing documents to this committee. If anyone seeks to pressure you against producing documents, that's also contempt. If you wish to raise an immunity claim, there are proper processes around that, and it is up to the Senate whether to accept that, not you or the Minister. So can you please take on notice to produce that document to the committee?
Sorry, which document are you referring to specifically?
The cost.
Of Robust?
Yes.
So again, Senator, that decision around the cost of Robust is... We'll take it on notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. David Burton of Inigo Jones Long-Term Weather uses sunspots and planetary cycles to correctly forecast decades in advance. He's got a track record because he's got investors who invest in his as a result of his successful forecast. He posted 12 months ago the good rains would start after 20th of November 2023. There was no El Nino and cyclones were likely. David Burton has no computer models and uses a $20 calculator because he understands the cycles. He got the weather right, you got it wrong. Hayden Walker, another long-term weather forecaster, correctly forecast severe storms in the areas where they did in fact occur. Will you talk to these private forecasters to work out why their system is right and yours wrong? Theirs is actual history, yours is models, isn't it?
Well, I just reject the whole premise of your questions. Our forecasts, as again I've indicated at the previous hearing on this subject, were remarkably accurate. I'm happy to go through them again. They're on the Hansard in terms of what we said in terms of the seasonal outlook. We were very clear as the year progressed. We were moving out of a dry and a warming trend into a moistening trend, and we also were very clear in our messaging that irrespective of the ENSO status and the seasonal forecasts, we know that in Northern Australia particularly, there is always the risk of severe weather, cyclones, floods, under any climatic situation. So I just don't agree with the premise of your question.
This is not just Northern Queensland, where we know that it's prone to storms, Western Queensland, Southern Queensland, and we know that your Bureau declares El Nino and positive Indian Ocean dipole events. And David Burton said there was no El Nino and cyclones were likely. David Burton quite often gets it right. He's paid considerable amount of money because their methods have been in use for Inigo Jones and, David Burton and Hayden Walker, and prior to them Inigo Jones and various other people. Their methods have been in use for decades because farmers, investors and businesses pay for their forecasts. They actually have to go in the market and sell them.
No, I understand that, and millions of Australians rely on our forecasts every day, including farmers and folks in the business community. I just reaffirmed to you, Senator, as I did at the previous estimates, just how remarkably accurate our forecasts were over the period. I've certainly said in previous hearings and in other forums that we acknowledge that some of the messaging that we gave during the previous spring and summer didn't get through in a manner that we would like, and that's not to blame the recipients of that messaging. It's just a fact. People heard a message around an ENSO status and thought, well, that's it, it's going to be hot, it's going to be dry. We update our forecasts every week, and we regularly updated our outlooks, and those outlooks proved to be very accurate. And we also affirmed in all those messages that, particularly during the summer, irrespective of the ENSO status, the risk in this country of thunderstorms, floods, tropical cyclones remains. In fact, at the National Severe Weather Forum here in Canberra, I made that very clear in my own presentation. There's one thing that this country's taught us is that severe weather can occur at any time. We're very clear in our messaging around that, Senator. So I'm only going to comment on our forecasts and warnings, and you know, others are welcome to comment on those made by other parties, but I stand by the quality of our forecasts. I did so at the previous hearing, and I'll continue to do so.
Well, I do agree with you,
Senator
Dorothy.
Roberts, we're going to have to rotate the call.
Okay. I note that your own forecast.
Well, Senator, I'd like to have a look at this because it's just a...
That's produced by...
I know, but very quick and cursory, and maybe it's not helpful, Chair, but is that you're comparing two different measures of data there. One's talking about chance of exceedance, another one talks about actuals. The two are fundamentally different concepts. Just because you have a map of Australia with colours doesn't mean to say that the two data sets are comparable. But let me have a look at it. If you have a specific question, again, I'd be happy to take it on.
Okay,
notice.
your faulty forecast caused farmers to offload cattle. The benchmark Eastern Young Cattle Indicator sat as high as 1,192 cents per kilogram of carcass weight in 2022, but by late 2023, after your forecast hit the streets, it had tumbled all the way to 349 cents per kilogram, so that's less than a third. Do you accept responsibility for that financial loss to the Australian capital market, as graziers sold stock because they feared overstocking in the looming dry?
So let's just get the data right here. So the Eastern States Young Cattle Indicator was about 1,200 cents per kilogram in January 22 and less than 400 cents a kilogram by October 23. Now, we released our El Niño declaration on the 18th of September. So by the 18th of September, that particular measure of cattle prices had dropped somewhere around by about 80%. To somehow draw a conclusion that because we issued that declaration on the 18th of September, that resulted in a run on the cattle market. It's just not supported by the data. And as I said at my previous hearings on this matter, in response, I think, to a question from Senator Davey, there are a whole range of factors influencing the decisions of primary producers. I've talked to a lot of primary producers, and absolutely our advice and our outlooks contribute to their decision-making. But to a person, to a farm business that I've spoken to, there are a whole range of other things that they take into account in making a decision to sell their cattle, Senator Roberts. So this notion that the Bureau declaring an El Niño at 18th of September can explain an 80% of the drop of in cattle prices from January 22 to October 23 is just a nonsense, frankly.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair. Can we come back?
Yeah. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Dr Johnson, could you please repeat your dates and prices regarding cattle prices? Eastern Young Cattle Indicator?
Yes, I'll try, Senator, if I can. Just bear with me. The information I have is that the Eastern Cattle, I think this is from Rural Bank. I'll just find the brief that I have and the advice I've received. Just bear with me, Senator. That the Eastern, so this is, I've been advised Rural Bank data that shows the Eastern States Young Cattle Indicator declined from approximately 1,200 cents a kilogram in January 22 to less than 400 cents a kilogram by October 23. And as I said, we declared an El Niño on the 18th of September. So just to reaffirm by that calculation, I'm advised that the cattle price had completed more than 80% of its downward run by the time we declared that El Niño in September.
Great, thank you very much.
That's the advice I have.
Yep. The Financial Review blames Bureau of Meteorology. How's the BOM's big dry weather forecast? How the BOM's big dry weather forecast cost millions? Bureau of Meteorology's botched weather call crushes elders' earnings. BOM mistakes hit farmers but slash inflation, and then we've got others there. Your botched prediction cost more than just farmers. It cost mum and dad investors in elders millions, with their share price dropping 25%. Do you accept that this was the fault of your forecast?
Well, Senator, again, I've already answered this question. We absolutely stand by our forecasts. Our forecasts are remarkably accurate. As I said at previous estimates hearing, commentary in the media, frankly, has been largely ill-informed and inaccurate, and we've sought to correct the record where we can. Take, for example, the Australian Financial Review article, which asserted that our El Niño declaration had been linked to elders' earning advice, and I think I've gone and actually had a look at the elders' advice, and it did not state or even imply in their earnings outlook. The actual advice, I don't know care what the financial review reported, but what elders actually said, my reading of that was it didn't state or even imply that their earnings outlook, that the Bureau El Niño declaration, I should say, affected earnings for the period 1 October to 30 September. So, you know, there's lots of things written in the media, Senator. We talked about this last time. If you actually have a look at the facts of what we said when we said it, our forecasts were remarkably accurate, given how complex it is, the sheer area that we're seeking to provide forecasts for. They'll always contain uncertainty. The forecasts are not perfect. They will always contain uncertainty. And also the long-range forecasts can't explicitly predict the emergence of cyclones, individual specific events. Okay? So there will be times where you'll have an anomalous specific event, and hence why in our public commentary we seek to affirm to the public and to industry that there's always the risk of severe weather in this country, and there's always the risk of cyclones in the tropics and subtropics in this country. So it is a forecast. It is an estimate of a point in time in the future based on the data at a particular point in time. We update it every week. I'd strongly encourage those who follow our services, and many millions of people do, to continue to check those updates. The situation changes all the time. A point-in-time statement back in September, we continue to update as more information came to hand.
So the answer to...
We are going to wrap up. So can you please make this your last question?
So I've draw your attention to, there are lots of people who are saying that the Bureau of Meteorology in its diagrams colours them to make it look hot and dry. But we actually see this rainfall over 124 years, no pattern, no trend, no declining trend, no increasing trend, just natural variation, and that's from the BOM. Why the doom and gloom? Why depress expectation for rural output, which also depresses investment, training and employment in the bush, and reduces standard of living and increases cost of living?
So I'm not sure I understand your question, Senator.
Why are you so negative?
Well, we're
preaching fear and doom when there's nothing to suggest that. And why do you use colours to exaggerate it?
Well, I don't agree with your statement that we are preaching doom and gloom. We're simply reporting the observations we're making of the environment around us, and we're reporting to the best of our ability what our guidance is for the time ahead. We do that objectively using world-class scientific methods, internationally peer-reviewed, highly regarded, and we'll continue to do so. So I just think we're entirely objective in our pronunciations and our public statements.
Thank you, Chair.